Every year on June 19th, Americans celebrate Juneteenth, the day enslaved people in Texas finally learned they were free more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Many people celebrate Juneteenth as a day of freedom, but I want to ask a difficult question. Did slavery really end? Now, before anybody gets upset, understand what I'm saying. I'm not disrespecting the history of Juneteenth. I'm not disrespecting the sacrifices of those who fought for our freedom. I'm asking whether America ended slavery or just changed what it looks like. As someone who spent 15 years incarcerated, I feel like this is a real conversation worth having. Let's talk about it.
12 years, 85%. I did it. I stood on it. The thing about the streets is you can be caught up at the wrong place at the wrong time. I still got partners out there. You can't expect everybody to see things the way you see it when everybody didn't go through what you went through.
Real topics, real stories, real events. Give my real output.
Now today we talk about Juneteenth on Real Talk with Illa Gezey. Freedom for some, not for all. Now let's get straight to it. I want to talk about what Juneteenth represents first and foremost. Juneteenth marks an important moment in American history. On June 19th, 1865, Union troops arrived in Texas and informed enslaved people that they were free. For many Americans, Juneteenth symbolizes liberation, progress, and the end of one of the darkest chapters in our nation's history. Now, while I respect that, it's still millions that celebrate freedom, but I can't help to think about the millions of men and women who are incarcerated right now and wake up behind bars, getting told what to eat, when to sleep, when they can eat, when they can sleep, what they can do, what they can't do, when they can shower, and so on and so forth. It kind of makes me wonder, what does freedom actually look like? Now, let's talk a little bit about the 13th Amendment so you can kind of get a narrative of where I'm going right now. Most people know the 13th Amendment ended slavery to some extent. What many people don't know is how it's worded. Now, the 13th Amendment says this in their words: neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Now, I should have said it a little bit different, but this is what the breakdown means. Except as punishment for a crime. And once you are convicted, then you are legally a slave. That's what it should have said. But that's exactly what it means. Slavery was abolished, but the exception remained. The exception is when much of today's debate begins, because if someone can be forced to work while incarcerated, earning little or no money, some people argue that slavery never truly disappeared. And I agree with that. It simply moved from plantations to prisons. Now, whether you agree with that, totally on you, but this is what I agree with. I've been back there. I've seen it. I've seen people work for pennies on a dollar, 10 cents an hour. I've seen it. I've seen people go to the kitchen working for absolutely free. This is why I didn't want to work a job when I was back there, because they work for absolutely nothing. Now, to be fair, you have nonviolent crime, people who made nonviolent offenses. They go back there. When they work, it goes to work credits, meaning they can work their time down to about 51% and they can possibly get out. You commit a violent crime, work credits don't even matter for you in South Carolina, at least. I don't know about other states when it comes down to that, because everybody's different. But work credits in South Carolina don't even matter. You can go to the kitchen all you want. If you committed a violent crime, that ain't even going to help you with your time. These are some of the things that I hope they shift and change eventually. But these are the things that's worth discussing. Now, I lived in those systems for 15 years. I understand accountability. I understand punishment. If somebody commits a crime, there should be consequences. I get that. But I also understand what it feels like for a system or an institution to control every aspect of your life. This has been going on with me ever since I was 17 years old. Some people look at prison as labor rehabilitation. They look at it as you put in that labor, you become rehabilitated. I don't think that's the way to be rehabilitated. I didn't put in that kind of labor. I'm rehabilitated. I noticed that I had to rehabilitate myself. You can't depend on the system to help you get rehabilitated. While you have good people who work back there as officers, caseworkers, counselors, and so on and so forth, they can't directly rehabilitate you. You have to be able and willing to rehabilitate yourself. Some people like to call it exploitation. I exactly line up with that. I agree with that. Some see it as job training. Some see it as legal servitude. The question isn't whether prison should exist. The question is whether America has honestly addressed the connection between incarceration and labor. Labor, free labor, still exists to this day. I can play this little clip right here so you know for a fact.
Do you think that the prison would benefit from him in a work capacity if he were sentenced to life without parole?
I say yes, with my experience, not only just in incarceration, but as former warden and even as a jail administrator. He's someone that's young, he's healthy. In reality, we need that labor, we need that sweat equity, and we will put him out there to work because we do have an aging prison population, jail administration. We have that, so we put these young individuals to work and get some sweat equity out of them since they are young and actually can do the work.
Now let's dig deeper into the 13th Amendment. Mississippi and the 13th Amendment. Now here's something that a lot of people don't know. Mississippi was the last state to ratify the 13th Amendment. This didn't happen in 1865. This didn't happen in 1910. This didn't happen in 1950. Mississippi voted to ratify this in 1995. Then the paperwork was never officially filed. Because of that oversight, the ratification wasn't formally completed until 2013. Think about that. We celebrating June 19th, 1865, but Mississippi kept the statute up. They did not uphold the 13th Amendment. They didn't ratify it legally. They voted to ratify it in 1995, then it didn't go into effect until 2013. Nearly 150 years after slavery was supposedly abolished. It's very weird, right? Now, some people would say that's just paperwork. Well, maybe it was, but symbolism matters. If ending slavery was so universally accepted, why did it take Mississippi up until 1995 to ratify the 13th Amendment in the first place? That's a question for y'all to answer, not me. I can't answer that. Now, while researching this topic, I came across some stats that are very much impactful and made me stop and think. According to a widely cited comparison in criminal justice discussions, there are more African Americans under correctional supervision today through prisons, jails, probation, parole, and supervision than there were enslaved African Americans before the Civil War. There are more people under the control of the correctional system now than there were in the 1800s during slavery. So we have more legal slaves now than they had back then. This gives you something to think about. Now, whether every detail of that comparison is perfect isn't really the point. The point is what the statistic forces us to think about. Why are so many under the correctional control? What role does poverty play? Education, crime, policy, broken homes, personal responsibility, systematic failures, or is it a combination of all those things? I feel like it could be a lot of things, but I came here today to bring facts. I got my opinion, but I wanted to bring facts to this conversation because this is a conversation America should be willing to have, honestly. So now, if you're listening to this and wondering how America got from emancipation in 1865 to the statistics we're discussing today, I wanted to bring some facts. So we're going to take a deep dive into this. The story didn't stop in 1865 when slavery was supposed to end. Shortly after the Civil War, many southern states passed what became known as black codes. We going down the history lesson, ladies and gentlemen. These laws targeted newly freed black Americans and often criminalized everyday circumstances. A person could be arrested for being unemployed. Right after Juneteenth, a person could be arrested for being unemployed. A person could be arrested for loitering. A person could be arrested for vagrancy. After convicted, guess what? They go back to the legal form of slavery, and they could be sentenced to labor. Then, after the black codes, came convict leasing. Convict leasing is when states began leasing incarcerated people to private businesses, farms, railroads, mines, and lumber companies. The companies paid the state, not the workers, and then the workers received little to no compensation. You have major companies still involved into this type of labor to this day. It may not be called convict leasing. I know in South Carolina it's called prison industries. They make things for these bigger companies to save money, and they give the guys 10, 15 cents an hour. I'm not lying. It's called PI. Google it. Look it up. They do have one PI in South Carolina that I remembered. I believe it was in Tiger River Penitentiary. Quote me, correct me if I'm wrong. But they were the only one that got $7 an hour or $5 an hour, whatever it is. All the other prison industries on other yards, 10, 15, 25 cents an hour. And guys still go to work. They go there. They get the money. I mean, to each his own. Let's go back to some of these facts. Some historians argue convict leasing became one of the closest things to slavery after slavery officially ended. Now, then came chain gangs. If you're born in my era or before, you've seen chain gangs, guys lined up on the road, connected to chains, doing road work and stuff like that. Prisoners were put to work building roads, digging ditches, and completing public projects while physically chained together. For decades, these practices became a normal part of life across the South. I don't see chain gangs anymore. I think the look must have deterred people away, but that's one thing. Next came the Jim Crow laws: segregation, disenfranchisement, economic barriers, and limited opportunities. And eventually, decades later, this became entering into my era. Decades later, America entered the era of mass incarceration, the war on crime, the war on drugs. The war on drugs is what created the 85%. This is what created people doing parts of their time, getting out of their time on good behavior, and so on and so forth, to a person having to serve over 3/4 of their time mandatory. And then you have mandatory minimums, 3 strikes law. Also have a 2 strikes law on armed robbery, 2 armed robberies to get you a life sentence. Policies that supporters argued were necessary for public safety, and critics argued contribute to the exploding prison populations. Now, I can be clear about this. I'm not saying every law was created with bad intentions, but what I am saying is when you follow the timeline, it is fair to ask a difficult question. Did America completely separate itself from the systems that existed before 1865? Because I can challenge that and say they did not. to me, I look at incarceration as newspapers back in the day. Yeah, you might have written it off as slavery should have ended, so on and so forth. But I feel like it just transitioned from plantations to prison yards. I feel like the newspaper went from paper, physical copies, to blogs. There is no difference. You're still getting the news. The same consumption is still news. Whether it be plantations or in the penitentiaries, slavery still exists. Now, when people hear the word or the phrase slavery ended, I think it's important to examine everything that happened afterward. Not just the history we celebrate, but the history we often avoid discussing. To be fair, though, slavery and incarceration isn't exactly the same thing. Most incarcerated people were convicted of crimes. Millions of law-abiding Black Americans live free and productive lives every day. Prison work programs can provide skills and structure. Those facts do matter. But another fact matters as well. Not everyone in prison is guilty. I know y'all see a lot of crimes where guys went to jail for looking at a white woman, or a white woman accused them of touching them. All of these certain things. You couldn't whistle at a white woman. These are crimes that could lead you to prison. So, everyone in prison is not guilty. I just interviewed Michael Pearson. He spent 15 years behind bars before they finally set him free. A Black solicitor named Chip Finney knew Michael Pearson was innocent for 2 years. He knew ever since 2023 that Michael Pearson was innocent. They took polygraphs. He was completely innocent. Yet, he had to live under the circumstances of a slave for 15 years. You know how many other Michael Pearsons there are out there? Too many. Thousands. Maybe even millions. Not everyone gets a second chance. Not everyone receives equal treatment. If freedom is truly something we value, then we should be willing to examine every institution that takes it away. I close out like this. When people ask me why I don't celebrate Juneteenth the same way that they celebrated, the answer to me is simple. It is hard for me to celebrate something where millions of people are still going through right now behind bars. How can I celebrate something from the past while ignoring people who still live under the system's conditions today? I'm going to say that again. I struggle to celebrate freedom from the past while ignoring people who still live under systems of control today. Maybe Juneteenth shouldn't be only about remembering what happened in 1865. Maybe it should also challenge us to ask who is still fighting for freedom in 2026. And that's real talk. I speak for my people that is incarcerated. I've met plenty good people that are back there. One mistake giving them a life sentence. One mistake giving them 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60 years. And even innocent people who are incarcerated right now fend for their innocence. Yet they are back there subjected to the 13th Amendment. I don't agree. I do believe we should celebrate freedom. I do believe we should celebrate everything around our freedom. But while we celebrate these things, please acknowledge, please give our people the information that the 13th Amendment says slavery is legal if you are convicted of a crime. This has been another episode of Real Talk with Illa Gezey. If y'all agree, disagree, it doesn't really matter. Drop a comment about it in the comments and we'll get straight to it. Let's talk about it. See y'all next time on the next episode of Real Talk with Illa Gezey. Peace.